So here we have another factoring problem, and we have 12a cubed minus a squared minus 6a. Now, a lot of times my students, they see something like this and they see a number cubed or a number to the fourth power, to the fifth power, doesn't matter. Whenever they see something like that, they start getting a little scared because it doesn't look like their traditional variable squared, something like a squared plus 2a minus 6. Something like that you would be able to factor, but when it's with a cubed, they start panicking. And remember, the first rule of thumb that I want to mention to you guys when factoring is that you want to go ahead and take out the greatest common factor. That would be your first step. First step is to take out your GCF. So I have this umbrella drawn right here, and for those of you who haven't seen any of the videos, you're probably wondering what this is. This is because it's reminding us when there's a number in front of the variable, you want to go ahead and use the umbrella method. But before we do that, our first step is the GCF. It's taking out the greatest common factor. So if we look at all three of these terms right here, our greatest common factor is actually an a. So we would want to pull out an a. Why? Because there's an a cubed, an a squared, and an a here. So if we pull out an a, what would be left over? Well, we would have 12 a squared minus a minus 6. And now we have something like this 12a squared minus a minus 6 looks a little more familiar with things we've been working with as far as factoring. So now, if there's a number in front of the variable squared, so there's a 12 in front of a squared, that tells us that we've got to use the umbrella method. And that kind of looks like an umbrella, that's why we call it the umbrella method. So if there's no number here, well, let's make our x. We bring down the number and the sign. Remember, if there's not a number in front of a variable, that means that's a 1. So that would be a minus 1 or a negative 1. And then I bring down my negative 6. Good. So remember, I have to tell myself, or I have to find out what multiplies to, actually, and it's not a 6. Let's erase this. It's not a negative 6 because we do 12 times negative 6, which would give us a negative 72. Good. Okay, so now I have to ask myself, what multiplies to a negative 72 and adds to a negative 1? Well, remember, when these signs are the same, so that's a negative and that's a negative, one number will be a positive and the other number will be a negative. Well, you're going to have to do some guess and check, I guess you would say here. It's not too complicated, but you basically want to find out what multiplies to negative 72. Let's see. What if I did negative 9 times 8? That gives me a negative 72. What if I did negative 9 plus 8? Because remember, it has to multiply to negative 72 and then it has to add to negative 1. That would give me a negative 1. Perfect. So my numbers here are negative 9, and here it's actually an 8. Good job. So now that we have that, remember, whenever we use the umbrella method, we also have to use the box. Remember that. It's going to be the umbrella box method. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the box here. Good. And I hope you're following along and actually doing these steps. Now remember my saying. Far left number goes to the top left corner of the box. 12. Far right number goes to the bottom right, so that's a negative 6. Then I take these numbers here, whatever's on this side and whatever's on this side, and I can put them anywhere in these two boxes. It doesn't matter. I could put a negative 9 here, or I could put the 8 here, and then whatever number's remaining goes here. So here I'll put the negative 9, and then here I'll put the 8. Perfect. So now what I have to do is I have to look at this row right here. So just look at the first row, and I'm going to take the greatest common factor of that row. So in this case, what's the greatest common factor? It would actually be 4. So I know 4 goes into 12 and 4 goes into 8. If you're having a hard time with that, you might want to review factoring using the greatest common factor. Then I divide. So I'm going to divide 4 into 12, which would give me 3. And then I'm going to go ahead and divide 4 into 8, which would give me 2. Perfect. Then I do 3 into negative 9, which would give me a negative 3. Now, I'm not dealing with variables yet, but if you want, I can kind of just put parentheses around these things so you can see where we're leaning towards. This would be now where I can go ahead and use my variable. And since it's a variable squared, all I do is just put an a there. And there's no sign, so it's a plus because it's a positive 2, right? 12 divided by 4 would give me a 3, and 8 divided by 4 gives me a positive 2. In here, I'm going to go ahead and put another a because that's going to be two binomials of our answers. So we have 3a plus 2, and then here, let's just bring this down. 4a, and if there's a minus sign there, we don't have to do anything. We just put the minus sign in there, minus 3. And that's actually our answer using the umbrella method. So remember, the first step is you want to take the greatest common factor so you don't get scared when you see a variable that's to a higher power.